You glance down at your phone and it already knows exactly where you are, but nothing up there is watching you. It can't even see you. And here's the strange part. You trust this blind little machine with where you're going and who you're meeting. Yet almost nobody can tell you how it finds them. Or that it'd be useless in 2 minutes if a handful of engineers hadn't trusted Einstein enough to do something that still sounds insane. So here's the fix. Your phone never calls home. It doesn't send your location anywhere. It just sits there and listens. The satellites shout the same thing over and over into empty space, never knowing you exist, and you're the one overhearing it. But if all it does is overhear a shout, how could that possibly tell it where you are? Because of one thing hidden inside the shout, the exact time it left. Your phone reads the time stamped on the signal, sees it arrived a hair late, and multiplies that tiny delay by the speed of light. And that gives it the exact distance to the satellite. The delay isn't a glitch, it's the ruler. But light is stupidly fast. It crosses a whole football field in a billionth of a second, so if the clock is off by even that much, your hair late turns into a wild guess, hundreds of feet from where you're standing. That's why each satellite carries an atomic clock. A clock so steady it would lose barely a second in a few million years. These are the most accurate clocks humankind has ever built. But knowing you're a certain distance from one satellite barely helps. It only tells you you're somewhere on a giant invisible bubble around it. You could be anywhere on that whole surface. So you add a second satellite, and now the two bubbles only touch in a ring. Add a third, and all three meet at a single point in space, 3 whispers, and there you are. Except that clean answer assumes your phone's clock is as perfect as the ones in orbit. It absolutely isn't. It's a cheap little quartz clock, always drifting, and that drift smears all 3 bubbles, so they never quite meet. So you bring in a 4th satellite. There's exactly one clock correction that snaps all 4 bubbles together at a single point, and it also fixes your phone's cheap clock in the very same instant. So the 4th one isn't really for accuracy. It makes your junk clock act atomic. Now step back and look at what that actually takes. Not one clock, but a whole fleet of them. Around 30 atomic clocks wheeling around the Earth, each one lapping the entire planet twice a day. And none of them are left to wander. A ring of stations on the ground watches every satellite constantly, checks it's exactly where it swears it is, and nudges its clock back in line. That's how 30 clocks stay trustworthy. The ground keeps them honest, every second. But this is where it should have all fallen apart. Put a perfect clock up there, and a perfect clock down here, and they do not agree. Up in orbit, time itself runs a little faster. The clocks up there gain time every single day, mostly because gravity is weaker that high up, and weaker gravity lets time speed up. Their huge speed drags it back a little, but nowhere near enough, so they end up ticking ahead. And if you did nothing about it, that tiny head start would poison every distance. Your location would be flat out wrong in about 2 minutes. Then it just keeps sliding, further and further off, day after day. So the engineers did something that sounds completely insane. Remember the most accurate clocks ever built? They set them wrong on purpose, tuned to tick at the wrong rate here on the ground, so that once they're flung into orbit and time speeds up, they finally tick right. The most precise instrument our species ever made, and its final tuning was to be exactly the wrong amount off, so that a flaw baked into time itself would cancel out, and your little blue dot would land right where you're standing. But not everyone believed it would work. On the little test satellite that tried this first, some engineers weren't sure Einstein was right, so they built in a switch, ran it at launch with no correction at all, and watched the clock race ahead exactly as he'd predicted. Then they flipped the switch to Einstein's numbers. You might wonder why a system this extraordinary is just free, sitting in everyone's pocket. It goes back to a tragedy. In 1983, a Korean Airlines passenger jet drifted off course and was shot down, 269 people gone, partly because the crew couldn't be sure where they were. And so the United States, which had built this for its own military, opened it up for everyone on Earth to use, so that no traveler would ever be that lost again. The most powerful navigation system ever made, handed to the whole planet for free. But here's what almost nobody realizes. It was never really a map system at all. Those same clocks quietly keep the power grid, the phone networks, and the world's money markets ticking in sync. It's a giant timing system, wearing a map's clothes. So the next time your dot snaps into place, remember what just happened. 4 faint whispers from clocks, 12,000 miles up, that have never once seen you clocks. We had to build wrong to keep them honest. Nothing up there ever found you. It only ever spoke. You did the finding every single time, just by listening to how late the sky was running. That quiet little dot is one of the most staggering things our species has ever pulled off, hiding in plain sight. A conversation with time, running in your pocket, one you never had to think about until right now. But GPS is only one of the invisible machines you're trusting this second. Every message you send takes a journey just as strange, and that one starts underwater.